The ancient Japanese blueprint for mental strength, Kaizen path. There is a moment in every warrior's life, a quiet breaking, a silent turning, a whisper from the spirit that says, enough, walk the path. Not the path of glory, not the path of ego, but the ancient road of inner discipline, forged by centuries of warriors who understood that the greatest battlefield is the mind. This story begins in a forgotten mountain province of Japan, where mist moves like a living spirit, where old temples hide lessons sharper than any blade, and where silence teaches more than speech ever could. Our protagonist arrives there broken. Shaken by fear he refuses to admit, trapped between the noise of modern life and the hollow echo of an undisciplined spirit. But atop that mountain lives a mentor, a quiet, immovable force who keeps the ancient system of Kaizen alive, the art of small, relentless steps toward mastery. Through tests of presence, humility, and endurance, the young man will discover that strength is not granted, it is carved, one disciplined breath at a time. This is not just a story, it is a blueprint, a ritual for reclaiming your mind and walking a path that fewer and fewer dare to follow. Welcome to the Kaizen path. In Chapter 1, the mountain of noise. The mountain was not quiet. People imagine that silence lives in high places, that altitude purifies the mind, that distance from the world calms the spirit. But the young man quickly learned a harder truth. You carry your noise with you, and no mountain can make you put it down. He climbed through a mist that moved like drifting spirits, cold enough to sting every exposed inch of skin, thick enough to feel like a veil between worlds. His breath was shallow, not from the height, but from the thoughts he couldn't outrun. Every step was accompanied by an inner commentary, regrets, failures, imagined futures, a storm of voices refusing to quiet. His name was Riku, a modern son of a modern city, fast, restless, anxious. He came seeking peace, but carried turmoil like a backpack full of stones. By the time he reached the mountain village, the sun had already surrendered behind the ridgeline, painting the wooden beams and tiled roofs in muted amber. The first thing he noticed was their eyes. The villagers moved slowly, deliberately, not because they lacked urgency, but because they possessed something he didn't. Presence. No darting glances, no restless fidgeting. Even the children carried themselves with a grounded stillness that felt ancient, as if carved into them by generations of discipline. Riku avoided their eyes, not out of rudeness, but because their calmness made him feel exposed, like they could sense every chaotic fragment inside him. He approached the old temple at the center of the village, its gate guarded by two weathered stone lions. Beyond them, incense smoke curled upward like a prayer. He hesitated, his heart beat like a drum in a small room, the kind of rhythm born from fear you pretend not to feel. Enter, a voice called from inside, deep, controlled. A voice that did not ask, it commanded. Riku stepped through the doorway and found Master Seijun sitting in Seiza, perfectly still, as if carved from cedar and resolve. The old man's face was a shrine of lines and shadows, each wrinkle a record of discipline, each breath a lesson waiting to be learned. You climbed with your legs, Seijun said calmly, but you arrived with your noise. Riku tried to speak, but the mentor raised one hand, an unmistakable gesture of silence. Seijun's gaze pierced him like a blade dipped in clarity. You seek peace, the master continued, yet you cling to the things that destroy it. Fear, unfinished ambitions, The ego that shouts even when no one is listening? Riku felt something collapse inside his chest, a small truth cracking open. How do I quiet it? He finally whispered. Seijun closed his eyes. You do not quiet the mind by force, he said. You quiet it with discipline. The mentor stood slowly, joints barely making a sound, and led Riku outside to a flat stone overlooking the valley. Sit, he commanded. Riku obeyed. Do not meditate. Do not breathe in any special way. Do not try to be calm. Seijun paused. Simply sit until you can hear the mountain breathe. Riku waited for further instruction. None came. Minutes dragged. The wind whispered. His legs ached. His mind screamed. Every insecurity rose like ghosts. Old arguments, forgotten mistakes, imagined disasters, the relentless drum of internal chaos. He failed the task within minutes. He stood up abruptly, pacing, frustrated by the sheer force of his own thoughts. Seijun watched without expression. This, the master said, is the first truth you must swallow. Discipline begins where comfort ends, and you have never truly stepped beyond comfort. Riku felt the shame, but also a spark, a beginning. The mountain had not been silent, but it had begun to teach. Chapter 2: The Mirror of Fear. The next morning, the village was wrapped in a thin blue dawn, the kind of quiet light that reveals more truth than it hides. Riku woke in the small guest room behind the temple, his back sore from the hard tatami mat, his mind already restless with questions he didn't want to face. He expected a lesson in meditation or perhaps another silent test of patience. Instead, Seijun appeared in the doorway without announcement. His presence filled the room like a move-in stillness. "Follow me," the master said. They walked down a narrow corridor lit only by paper lanterns, whose warm glow danced inside their thin rice paper skins. The wooden floors creaked softly beneath their feet, not in protest, but as if greeting them. At the end of the hall stood a sliding door Riku had not seen before. Seijun opened it without ceremony. Inside lay a small dojo, empty but for a single cracked mirror hanging on the wall opposite the entrance. The glass was fractured down the center, splitting any reflection into two uneven halves. Riku felt his chest tighten. Something in the room carried a weight beyond explanation. A ritualistic heaviness, as if generations had confronted themselves here and left their unresolved fragments in the air. Seijun gestured toward the mirror. "Stand there." Riku obeyed, though every part of him tensed as though preparing for an unseen blow. "Look," Seijun commanded. Riku stared. At first, all he saw was what he always saw: a tired face, eyes carrying too many sleepless nights, a jaw clenched from years of swallowing unspoken fear. But the longer he stood, the more unbearable the silence became. It was not the mirror that made him uneasy. It was the fact that it reflected not just form, but the truth he refused to acknowledge. "Tell me," Seijun said quietly, "what do you fear?" Riku's instinct was immediate, to answer with something vague, something acceptable. Failure, disappointment, uncertainty. He opened his mouth. Seijun cut him off. "Not the socially acceptable fear, the real one, the one you do not speak because it exposes your ego's weakness." Riku swallowed hard. His throat felt tight, as if the truth itself resisted being spoken. I don't know," he said finally. The master's voice sharpened. Not harsh, but precise enough to slice through denial. "You do know. You simply do not want to meet it." Seijun stepped beside him, their reflections now standing side by side in the broken mirror. The ancient warriors understood something modern minds have forgotten, he said. Fear is not an enemy. Fear is a messenger, but most men kill the messenger before hearing the message. He tapped the mirror with one knuckle, a soft sound, but sharp in the stillness. This crack, he said, is the crack in your spirit, a line dividing the man you pretend to be from the man you are. Riku exhaled shakily. I'm afraid, he hesitated, feeling the weight of the words gather. I'm afraid that I'll never be enough, that no matter how much I try, I will always fall short, and people will see it. Seijun nodded once, not in approval, but in acknowledgement of honesty. A man cannot fight shadows, he said, but he can face them. The master walked to the center of the dojo and drew an invisible line in the air with his hand. This is the stoic cut, he explained, a technique to separate emotion from reaction, to let fear speak, but not command. Riku watched, breath steadying with curiosity. Seijun continued, when the fear rises, you do not suppress it. You observe it, name it, and then decide your action consciously. This is how a warrior removes the ego from the blade of thought. He turned to Riku. Today's training begins not with movement, but with truth. From this moment forward, every fear you feel must be named. Silence is no longer an escape. It is your forge. Riku felt something shift inside him, a subtle but undeniable turning. Not courage, not yet, but the beginning of courage. Chapter 3. The Discipline Ritual. Dawn arrived like a blade of pale gold, cutting through the night, clean, sharp, and unforgiving. Riku woke before the temple bell sounded, though he wasn't sure whether it was discipline or the weight of anticipation that pulled him from sleep. The air in his lungs felt cold and metallic, as if the mountain itself were testing him before the day even began. Outside, the world was silent except for the crisp crunch of frost beneath his feet. He found Master Seijun standing near the courtyard gate, hands folded behind his back, watching the horizon with a stillness that felt older than the trees themselves. You're early, Seijun said without turning. I couldn't sleep, Riku replied. Good. Restlessness is a sign the old self is dying. Let us begin the ritual. Seijun walked toward the main temple grounds and Riku followed. This time, the master didn't explain what the ritual consisted of. He simply performed each task with unwavering precision, expecting Riku to mirror him. Task 1, tend the grounds. Seijun handed him a bamboo broom, light in weight, heavy in symbolism. Every stroke, the master said, is a stroke across the surface of your mind. Riku swept the courtyard stones while the cold bit into his fingers. At first his mind wandered. Complaints, distractions, the background noise of ego. But Seijun corrected him gently. Return to the stroke, feel the movement, observe the thought, release it. And so he swept. 3 stones, then 10, then the entire courtyard. Not perfectly, but with presence. Task 2, cold kata. Seijun led him to a shaded clearing where sunlight barely touched the ground. Remove your coat, he said. Riku hesitated. The air was frigid enough to sting, but he obeyed. The master began moving through a slow kata, fluid like water, precise like a surgeon's hand. Every shift of weight, every controlled exhale carried a depth of meaning Riku struggled to grasp. His own movements, by comparison, were stiff, hurried, imbalanced. Seijun corrected him with a tap of the staff. Discipline is not speed, he said. It is devotion to the smallest motion. They repeated the sequence again and again and again until Riku's muscles trembled not from exertion, but from the humility of realizing how much he had overlooked in life simply because he had never slowed down. Task 3, the Book of Errors. When the sun climbed higher, Seijun finally allowed a moment of rest. He brought Riku to a wooden bench beside a stone lantern and handed him a small journal. On the cover, a single kanji, Gai, Kai, meaning to correct. "This is your book of errors," Seijun said. "Every night you will write your mistakes, not with shame, but with clarity. A warrior must see the pattern of his own missteps if he wishes to break them." Riku opened the journal, running his thumb across the blank page. It felt like a mirror cleaner than the cracked one in the dojo. He didn't know where to begin. Seijun watched him struggle. Then he offered a quiet truth. Weak men avoid their mistakes. Strong men document them. Masters transform them. The words settled in Riku's chest like hot stones, heavy, grounding, impossible to ignore. The ritual continues. As the day unfolded, the tasks repeated in cycles: sweep, train, reflect, each small action cutting away a thin layer of ego, revealing something steadier beneath. Riku found himself breathing differently, moving differently, observing more, and forcing less. Not mastery, not even close, but a flicker of inner order in a place once ruled by chaos. And that flicker was enough. But to Chapter 4, the silence beyond silence. By the time Riku awoke on the morning of the 4th day, something inside him had shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but in the quiet, powerful way that a river carves stone over centuries. He felt lighter, not because his burdens had disappeared, but because he had finally started carrying them with intention. He stepped into the courtyard, expecting to see Seijun already waiting, but the master stood at the edge of the temple grounds with a walking staff in hand and a travel cloak draped over his shoulders. "We are leaving the village today," Seijun announced. Riku blinked, caught off guard. "Where are we going?" "To a place the villagers call the Shrine of No Echo." Seijun's gaze turned toward the dense forest beyond. "It is where warriors confronted their final illusions." Riku felt a subtle tremor in his chest. Anticipation, uncertainty, something between fear and curiosity. They entered the forest soon after sunrise. The path wound through towering cedar trees whose trunks rose like the pillars of an ancient cathedral. The air was thick with resin, earth, and something older. A scent that made Riku feel as if he were stepping deeper into himself with every step. For a long while, neither spoke. Only the forest breathed around them, wind moving through branches like whispered incantations. After an hour of climbing, the terrain grew sharper, the trail narrower. Roots twisted like serpents beneath their feet, and boulders jutted from the hillside like forgotten monuments. Riku's breath deepened as fatigue seeped into his muscles. "Master," he said, trying not to pant, "what is this place we're going to truly for?" Seijun did not slow. "Do you remember what you learned on the first day?" "Silence," Riku replied. "Not quite," Seijun corrected. "You learned your resistance to silence. A man cannot become present if he fears the world inside him." He paused before continuing. "The shrine will force you to face a silence without distraction, task, or external structure. If the ritual of discipline sharpened your mind, then this test will reveal its cracks." Riku swallowed hard. He wasn't sure he was ready. He wasn't sure anyone could be. As they climbed higher, the forest opened into a clearing. There, at the center, stood a small stone shrine, weathered, ancient, half reclaimed by moss and time. The roof sagged slightly, but its presence radiated an unshakable gravity, as though countless warriors had left their spirits behind in the space between those crumbling stones. "This is it," Sejun said. Riku felt a chill. He didn't know if it came from the cold air or the weight of the place itself. Sejun turned to him with the calmness of someone delivering a universal truth. "You will stay here," the master said, "alone until nightfall." Riku's pulse quickened. "No meditation practice, no movement ritual?" "No instruction," Sejun replied. "No tasks, no mantra, no goal, just silence. Just you." Riku exhaled shakily. The idea of being alone with his thoughts without guidance felt more intimidating than any physical test he had endured. Sejun rested a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture, warm yet grounding. "You fear the return of your old mind," the master said, "but silence is not your enemy. It is the doorway. And behind that doorway is the version of you that discipline has been preparing to meet." Before Riku could respond, Sejun turned and began the descent back down the trail. The forest swallowed his figure within moments. Riku stood alone in the clearing, heart echoing inside his ribs like a drum in an empty hall. He approached the moss-covered shrine and sat before it, legs crossed, hands resting in his lap. The forest exhaled around him. Then the silence came, slow, steady, like nightfall creeping across the ground. And within seconds, his mind unleashed its storm. Chapter 5: The Warrior Who Breathes. When dawn finally rose over the mountain again, its light seemed different, brighter, sharper, as though the world had exhaled a layer of fog Riku never knew existed. He stepped out of the shrine's clearing with a steadiness in his chest that felt foreign, yet right, a presence born not from force but from surrender. The forest greeted him as if recognizing the shift, leaves shimmering in the morning breeze, branches swaying with slow grace, a chorus of natural rhythm that seemed to respond to the calm within him. Sejun waited near the base of the trail, standing with his staff planted in the earth. He studied Riku's face for a long moment before speaking. "You survived the silence," the master said. Riku shook his head gently. "No," he replied, voice quiet but steady. "I didn't survive it. I stopped fighting it." A faint smile touched Sejun's lips, the kind of smile earned, not given. They walked back toward the village with unhurried steps. The air tasted clearer. Riku felt each footfall with newfound precision, his breath aligned with the mountain's rhythm, slow, deep, grounded. "Tell me," Sejun said, "what did the silence reveal?" Riku thought for a long moment. There had been fear, yes, old memories resurfacing like ghosts, shadows he had spent years outrunning. But somewhere within the panic came a still point, a space in the mind where thoughts passed like drifting clouds instead of storms. "It showed me," Riku said finally, "that my mind was never the enemy. The enemy was my attachment to the noise." Sejun nodded. "That is the awakening. A warrior does not conquer the mind. He coexists with it. He breathes with it. He listens, then acts with intention." The village rooftops emerged through the trees as they descended the final slope. But something was different now. Riku no longer felt intimidated by the calm presence of the villagers. If anything, he felt connected, as though he could finally perceive the silent discipline woven through their movements. He returned to the temple and bowed deeply before stepping inside. The weight he carried on his first day, the anxiety, the noise, the restless ego seemed distant, as if belonging to another lifetime. In the courtyard, Seijun stopped and turned to face him. "The ancient system has been passed to you," he said, "but do not mistake this for an ending. Transformation is not a moment. It is a practice, a path you must walk when no one is watching and no one applauds." Riku absorbed the words, feeling them settle inside him like seeds planted in fertile earth. He looked around the temple, the sweeping stones, the old wooden beams, the cracked mirror in the dojo. Each piece now held meaning far deeper than when he arrived. "Master," he said softly, "what happens now?" Seijun placed the staff against the wall and folded his hands behind his back. "You return," the master said, "to the world, to your life, to the battlefield, where discipline matters most, the ordinary day." Riku's heart tightened, not out of fear, but out of the bittersweet ache of leaving the place where he had been remade. "Will I fall back into the noise?" he asked. Seijun stepped closer, his voice a quiet certainty. "You may stumble," he said. "Every warrior does. But you have learned the breath of presence, the cut of ego, the ritual of discipline, and the silence beyond silence." He touched 2 fingers to Riku's forehead. "You carry the mountain now." The words echoed through Riku's chest like a bell struck in an empty hall. He bowed again, deeper than before, not out of respect for Seijun alone, but for the version of himself that had been born on this mountain. As he gathered his few belongings and stepped toward the village gate, he felt the world opening before him, vast, uncertain, but no longer overwhelming. For the first time in years, Riku breathed without rushing, a warrior's breath, slow, deliberate, alive. He walked down the mountain path, not away from something, but toward himself,